Hello students, this is Ridhima Shirodkar from Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Khandola. We are looking at PSC 105, that is Understanding Psychological Disorders. We were looking at types of sexual abuse, dysfunctions and paraphilias, part 3. In the previous modules you have looked at sexual abuse and dysfunctions. Today we will be looking at paraphilias. In outline, we will be understanding the meaning of paraphilic disorders and types of paraphilic disorders. Learning outcomes, through this the student will be able to understand the difference between paraphilias and paraphilic disorders, and they will be able to reflect on the various kinds and the symptoms of paraphilic disorders. Okay, so what are paraphilias? Basically they refer to non-traditional sexual practices which exist alongside the traditional ones. So remember, the word philia by itself means love or affection, and para means apart from. So it's apart from the so-called normal traditional sexual practices which are there. Due to the popularity of sexual themes in the media as well as the internet, and the non-traditional sexual experiences are gaining a lot of popularity today. So couples may enjoy imagining various and different kinds of sexual encounters and experiences, so that this kind of increases the excitement in their sexual relationship. For example, a partner may like and enjoy his partner or her partner dressing in a particular way, wearing leather clothes, or wearing a particular kind of shoe, things like that, and this enhances the sexual experience. If this does not cause any sort of distress to the partners, and if the partners seem to be comfortable with this kind of a experience, you cannot consider this to be a disorder, because this is their personal relationship and it is not affecting them in any way. There are various books which are turned into movies like 50 Shades of Grey, which brought about the concept of submission and dominance in sexual relationships, which are also part of paraphilias. What we need to understand is that just how common and how fine sexual relationships are, people may engage in things to enhance sexual relationships, and you cannot always consider it as disorders. So paraphilias are not always disorders unless and until it causes distress to any one of the partner or to the individual himself or herself. So as I told you, philia basically is love and or affection, para is apart from it. So in order to qualify as disorders, the paraphilia must interfere with one's personal, social, professional life and cause significant distress or harm to oneself or to others. Okay? So only then can you consider a particular condition to be a paraphilic disorder. If both the couple is fine with experiencing and enhancing their sexual experience by having a little bit of a weird fantasy, it is fine. But if it is causing distress, then it goes into the disorder category. So the term paraphilia was coined by Wilhelm Steckel, and this term was first used in DSM-3. Now we are of course in DSM-5. When the sexual desires or behaviors become problematic, they may be classified into a disorder category. Sometimes the behaviors may also be illegal in nature, which we will look at, and again this warrants for a lot of research, investigation and things like that. On the whole, paraphilic disorders in DSM-5 are more long term. They cause distress, and they may also involve harm or distress to another individual who is there. In general, there is a kind of a gender difference which we see, where males exhibit more such kind of paraphilic disorders as compared to females. So let's now look at what are these paraphilic disorders and the various kinds of them. First is the exhibitionistic disorder, something which many of us may have experienced. In this condition, an individual may get sexually aroused by exposing his genitals to an unsuspecting stranger. So generally this is seen in males, and these males are called as flashers, and they might kind of find women in a particular place, like for example where the women are quite freely roaming, like a park or a mall, or even in Goa perhaps near the bus stand and things like that, and when the woman just looks at them, they might just unzip their pants and expose their genitals, and the woman gets really shocked and stunned and taken aback. This entire experience may be used as a part of their sexual fantasy later on. Okay? So these are called as flashers because they flash their genitals, and it's called as an exhibitionistic disorder. In the US, this is considered to be a crime. Again, it does not involve physical contact per se, and also it's a very underreported crime, like especially here we feel that it's a part and parcel of our life, but it can be very traumatizing to the victim because they're really not expecting it. Exhibitionists also show a very high recidivism rate. What does recidivism mean? That after treatment also they may go back into this kind of an activity. So it's not like after treatment they'll be not doing this again, they may actually go back into it, which is a sad part. There is a tendency for exhibitionists to move on to more serious sex crimes. Okay, generally men engaging in this disorder have not been abused as children, because in many other paraphilic disorders we see, you know, the individuals who are engaging in such disorders have been abused and they are traumatized, but in this disorder this is not the case. And what kind of treatment can benefit them? Group treatment, group therapy, where all the exhibitionists sit together with a moderator and they explain their experiences. They kind of explain the cues which cause them to do this and why do they get arousal with such kind of flashing behavior. Again, they are also taught to control their urges, you know, so CBT, that is cognitive behavior therapy, is used, where they are taught to control their urges and how they should react to a situation where they may feel a desire to flash or to exhibit their genitals. Sometimes also empathy treatment is given, where they are kind of empathy is aroused in them to make them understand the viewpoint of the victim. And as a pharmacological therapy, SSRIs or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors may be given. The victims, of course, they experience trauma, distress after this particular disorder or after this particular incident, I'm sorry. So this basically is an exhibitionistic disorder. Let's go to the next one. It is frotteuristic disorder. Frotteuristic. In this, the individual gains sexual arousal by rubbing or touching a non-consenting person. This very often happens in crowded buses, and generally again this disorder is seen in males. The male may purposely find a crowded place and indulge in this rubbing behavior, and it may be taken as an accident. It happened by mistake because the place is so crowded. Okay, generally the confrontation or the contact may happen from the side or the back and rarely face to face. The man will never come in front of the particular victim and, you know, touch the person. It is always from the back or the side. In places like Tokyo, you know, during the peak hour where women generally are roaming in the subways, they have made it an all-female kind of a subway where only female police officers, parole officers and women go to reduce this frotteurism. To be diagnosed as a disorder, the individual may feel the intense urge to rub or touch and do the act for the arousal of it. They experience some sort of a sexual arousal when they do it. It lasts for 6 months and it interferes with their daily functioning. So understand that whatever behaviors we are looking at, it may be exhibitionism, it may be frotteurism, and even in the future ones, the individual is doing it mainly for an arousal, a sexual arousal. The next one is a fetishistic disorder, something which is very often shown in movies and films. It involves an erotic fixation on a non-sexual object or a body part. So something like a sock. So they feel like, you know, sexually aroused when they see a sock of a woman, the socks that we wear, or you know, they may be obsessed with a woman's body part like the neck of the woman or something like that. So actually these particular objects are not really sexual in nature, but they get this fixation on that particular object. Again, it lasts for 6 months and it causes significant distress. So what are some of the fetish objects which are very often seen? You know, high heeled shoes of the woman, satin underwear, stockings, the feet, particular kind of bags, particular materials. So in a classic study in 1986, a man who had a fetish to high heeled shoes had collected more than 1,000 of these, which he had hidden from his wife in the attic. Okay, so they are, it's not like they don't have a relationship, they have a proper relationship, but they also have these kind of fetishes, as you say, where they are obsessed with one particular object which are actually non-sexual to gain that kind of a sexual arousal. The individual may actually just stroke the object and feel the object and masturbate while doing it to kind of enjoy the sexual experience. Again, as I told you, it should last for 6 months and cause impairment or distress. The next disorder which we look at is a sexual masochism disorder. This is a very, it can be a very serious condition where this involves experiencing sexual pleasure from the act of being humiliated, beaten, bound or made to suffer. So only if I am humiliated, only if I am beaten by somebody, literally beating the person, you know, or I am whipped, that is when I experience sexual arousal. It can be extremely dangerous because you are kind of harming yourself in the process, and again it should last for 6 months or more and it should cause distress. This disorder is mainly seen both in males and females, okay? Although a very few number of females have been found. Research in neuroscience basically shows that there is a heightened arousal of the central nervous system to pain and sexual stimuli. So when pain and sexual stimuli are shown, there is a heightened arousal of the CNS, that is the central nervous system, and then there may also be an overlap between the pathways of pain and sex. So when the individual feels pain, they also feel sexually aroused. Okay. So when you are diagnosing this disorder, generally clinicians or therapists may kind of ask you, is asphyxiation present? That means the stoppage of oxygen. So the individual may actually put a plastic bag on their head so that they feel choked and the oxygen is reduced so that they get that sexual arousal. Again, as of course it is sounding very, very dangerous. So such kind of a disorder can be extremely harmful for the person concerned. Okay, so this was the sexual masochism disorder, where you experience sexual pleasure from the act of being humiliated, beaten, bound or made to suffer. The other disorder which is related is the sexual sadism disorder. Sadism is characterized by gaining pleasure by subjecting another person to pain or humiliation. So I am beating another person, I am whipping another person to get sexually aroused. Again, it is found more in males than in females. It must be for around 6 months or more, and the other partner who you are trying to make to suffer is non-consenting. The person is not consented to this. There are some relationships where the masochists and the sadists, they come together, where one likes to be beaten and the one likes to beat the other person. Such a relationship may also work, but if I am beating somebody without that person's consent because I am getting sexual pleasure, then something is really wrong there. This disorder is often comorbid, or it occurs together with other disorders like borderline and antisocial personality disorder. So sadists, as we say, they enjoy causing you pain. In this particular case, the sadist is getting sexually aroused by causing somebody pain. Let's look at the transvestic disorder. Recurrent and intense sexual arousal from cross-dressing. Okay, either manifested by fantasies, urges or behavior. So a male may dress like a female and get sexual pleasure, or a female may dress like a male and get sexual pleasure. Now remember that there are people who are transgenders or transsexuals. Okay, they are the ones who are they are born a particular sex, like they are born, let's say, male, but they are not comfortable with their male sex, and therefore they take up the gender or the social role of a female. Therefore they do a lot of reassignment, sex reassignment surgeries, and then they will dress like the gender that they believe. Like if I am born a male but I feel more like a female, I may start dressing like a female, not to get sexual arousal, just to relate to my gender. So you have to kind of differentiate between the transsexuals and the transvestites. Transvestites are cross-dressing. They are dressing like the other sex to get sexual pleasure. Voyeuristic disorder is the next one. So voyeurism is an activity that can be considered to be illegal in nature. So what does it mean? Voyeurism is the act of watching unsuspecting others engage in private activities like undressing, having sexual relations, or engaging in any other such behavior. So I am watching somebody having sex or having a bath or undressing, and I am getting sexually aroused by this. I am not trying to go and be a part of that relationship. I am not trying to go and abuse that person. I am just watching. These are called as peepers. Okay, they peep into the windows to see what is happening between couples or whoever. This is usually seen in males, and it begins from the age of 15 years. Voyeurs are generally not interested in having any kind of a relationship with the person they are watching. They are just watching and gaining pleasure out of it. It is considered as a disorder if it goes on for 6 months, and of course you are watching people who are not allowing you to watch them, you are watching them behind their back. Okay. Lastly, let's look at the pedophilic disorder. This disorder involves a persistent sexual interest in prepubescent or early pubescent children. That means children who are reaching adolescence and puberty. The clinical definition of pedophilia does not require a sexual act as such. They are not actually performing the act, but they have a sexual interest in these children. There are some individuals with pedophilia who have not really acted on their urges. So what does a pedophile do? They groom a child, they select a child and they groom the child. They give the child chocolates, sweets, treats, and they gain the trust of the child. And later on they make the child do some behaviors which will give them sexual arousal, like touch their penis or something like that. Pedophiles are generally males, okay. So they will kind of win trust of a particular child, and then they will kind of allow them to do behaviors through which they will get sexual pleasure. In DSM-5, for a condition to be diagnosed as pedophilic disorder, the individual must experience arousal by the child and does not experience a similar arousal from adults. Okay? So the individual is a grown adult individual, but they are gaining pleasure from the child and not from other adults. Also, secondly, the individual may have acted on these urges, or these urges are causing distress. So not all pedophiles actually act on them, but they are constantly thinking about this. Pedophilia is found to appear only in males, and it is found that if you look at the MRIs and the CT scans, these males have lower volume in the right amygdala, that's a part of the brain. Also, it is seen there is a reduced functionality and network activity between the left amygdala and frontal regions of the brain, and this kind of the awareness of social and emotional cues are reduced over here because there is reduced functionality. So, these areas are kind of involved in social and emotional awareness, and because there is a lower functionality in this, the individual may not be really socially and emotionally aware. Pedophilia treatment focuses on teaching the pedophile to control one's urges and how to self-regulate. Also today, there are a lot of school-based programs which teach children what is a good touch and bad touch, because as I told you that children really do not really know. If someone is giving them chocolates, some uncle is coming and giving them pastries and chocolates, they may kind of get lured and attracted. They don't know what is right and wrong very often. So school-based programs teach these things to the children. There are unspecified paraphilic disorders like making obscene calls and gaining a lot of sexual pleasure from it, or feces sometimes cause sexual arousal to people, but these are not documented as such. Okay, so I hope this module is clear to you all. You all will get more information in the quadrant data. These are the references for the module. Thank you.